Kia ora, everybody. My name is Jesse Armstrong, and I am the co-founder and chief executive officer of a company called Vaka. I just wanted to start off my presentation by telling you a little bit about myself and my background, and it's going to be quite relevant for the topic for my breakout session today, which is all about innovating your life and using the principles of innovation to improve the quality of your life. So as you can tell, I am an entrepreneur. I'm based in New Zealand, and I am half Maori and half European, New Zealand European, as my ethnic background. And so my company is actually based in the education sector, teaching all kinds of people how to use technology like 3D printing, like these machines behind me, to make money using principles of entrepreneurship. So I wanted to explain a little bit about who I am as a person, because the topic for my breakout session today, which is really based on multiple principles taught in launching leaders, came from my experience as an innovator and entrepreneur. So to start off with, I thought I would explain who I am as a person. And as you can see, there's some another language there. This is the Maori language for those who are seeing this for the first time. That kind of aspect of who I am culturally is a really important part of my life, and I try to use it as a part of my work as an entrepreneur wherever I go. So Kawaio in Maori means who am I? I am a maker. When I went to high school, I was not a very bright student as far as typical high school textbook style goes. I was very bad at focusing, especially when I had teachers who would just talk the lessons at us and not actually try to guide us through learning. And as a result of that, I did not think that I was going to be smart enough to run a business or even graduate at university with degrees in the science or technology or anything. I thought maybe I could get into some kind of business, but on the sales side, because I liked kind of talking to people. But I didn't really give it that much thought at high school. What I did discover is that I had a love for creativity, and it started off with a love for music and learning how to play musical instruments. But as I grew older and finished high school, I started finding this absolute fascination with making things physically and digitally. So here are some examples of the kinds of stuff that this passion of mine has developed into. I needed a workbench to do the kind of work that I do, so I decided to build my own workbench from scratch. And I didn't know how to do it. I had a few mates, a few friends of mine who knew a little bit about building. And so I kind of asked them for some tips, but I learned most of what I know about building from YouTube. And so I built everything from the drawers to the bench top, even the tool holders that you see on the left there, I built as well, and kind of customized it to the look that I wanted. I learned how to do basic electrical work. So I put all of the power sockets in with a light system. And because I'm a geek and I like futuristic things, I like to put these neon strips on there, these kind of LED strips to kind of make it look cool. But all of this, I just had to learn from scratch. Next, at one point in my life, I got into longboarding and decided I want to take something that looks really old and beaten up and restore it and learn about that process and solve problems along the way doing that. I decided to dabble in building electric vehicles. In particular, this is one of the first things I built in that category, which was an electric scooter. And I actually used this to get around from when I had an office in Wellington. This is our capital city in New Zealand. This was my main form of transport. And it was able to carry my heavy body around. And I was able to get, I think, 60 kilometers an hour on at top speed, which was pretty gnarly on a scooter. But I built it from this old scooter that I bought off Facebook Marketplace for 50 bucks. Never done it before, but I was able to learn everything I needed from YouTube and from talking to a couple of people I knew who had done this kind of stuff before. I'm also a dreamer. I love to kind of expand my horizons beyond what I know in my world today. I like to listen to books like novels, fantasy novels. I love superhero movies. I just love all of this kind of creative storytelling. And as a result of kind of getting into that space, I dabbled in different areas of digital technology, but in particular, it was my love for 3D printing that came out of nowhere as a surprise, really. And it allowed me to really kind of become the true geek that I was and make really cool things. But as a result of this, I had opportunities to work in the film industry, and I made things like props for films, which you can see examples of here. And in New Zealand, we have a really cool film industry. We work with Weta Workshop, who do a lot of really big films. So I met people from Weta Workshop who would teach me movie grade techniques for finishing some of these 3D prints that I'd done. So they, the directors who were commissioning me to do props for their films would have a film ready prop. And all of this, once again, I learned from YouTube and just kind of asking people who I knew that were in that space. And lastly, I am an innovator. And all of the story that I've told about myself leads to this point. All of these things that I made, things that I built, the things I got curious about, came from this intuitive ability to innovate. And we'll talk about what innovation means later, but I want to point out that when I discovered that I was an innovator, and it was a part of who I am as a part of my identity, it shaped the most important decisions for the rest of my life. My career choice, where I decided to live, the types of people I decided to spend time with. These are all principles that you would have learned about in Launching Leaders, finding mentors, developing habits. This became very real for me when I discovered that I loved innovation and becoming an innovator. And so the business that we run today is teaching others how to do that, how to use technology like 3D printing. In this case, you can see all these students we've worked with across many schools in New Zealand have used this technology to take an idea from their head and actually materialize it into something that they can hold and use. And then, of course, we teach them how to make money from it, which is always nice. But the main point of my session today, and all of the stuff I've told you about myself, really comes down to one main point, which is all about innovating not just a product or a service, but innovating your life. In Launching Leaders, we talk about taking control. Taking control means we have to be proactive. If we want to become a certain type of person, or we want to have a certain amount of success in the work that we do, if we've never done that kind of stuff before, then we have to become an innovator for our lives. We have to figure out how to solve those problems and achieve those things we want to achieve. And I figured that the first thing we would need to do in order for us to become innovators for our own lives is to define the word innovation. Innovation is one of those words where people have heard of the word before, and they will probably associate things like Steve Jobs and Apple, Elon Musk, Bill Gates. They'll probably associate these things with the word innovation. It tends to have a heavy influence around technology because that's where people think about innovation. But innovation is not just making amazing technology. The principle of innovation is all about this. By definition, the word innovate means to introduce something new or make changes in anything established. So yes, we can do that with a technology product like many of the great entrepreneurs and innovators have done. Or we could take the same principle of innovation and apply it to our lives, introducing something new to our lives, or making changes to maybe some of the habits that we have, or some of the ways that we spend our time, some of the people we hang around, where you can use this principle of innovation to introduce a new way of living. And I'll give you a very real example that I've had to go through in my own life, where I've had to use innovation to navigate my way through a difficult problem. But to do that, before I could do that, I want to introduce the process of innovation. So as I tell you the story of this, this particular problem I've had to try to solve, you can see how the steps of this process, this innovation process, fit in with that. So to kind of start off, the first step of innovation is to define. What I mean by this is to define the problem you're actually trying to solve. Instead of just saying, I want to have a healthier lifestyle, which is great, but very broad, narrow that down and identify what aspects of my health do I need to actually work on the most right now. And so this is where it ties into this example I'm going to share with you. Within my own kind of well-being, health, lifestyle, I have three main areas of focus: nutrition, exercise, and sleep. Well, of the three areas, the one that I have struggled with the most for the longest time is sleep. I was diagnosed a number of years ago with obstructive sleep apnea, which is basically where I stop breathing in the middle of the night. And as you can imagine, when your body does that, it will force itself awake. And going through that repeatedly every night means I'm more sleep deprived, and basically means I can't function to my peak. And this became, as time went on, it became a bigger problem for me. I found that I was becoming more and more sleep deprived. I was struggling to listen and stay focused, especially in business meetings. I was struggling to be creative because my brain was just so tired. Sometimes I would struggle to actually just get sentences out clearly because I was just so tired. And I would struggle with driving sometimes, and had a few close calls, almost crashing my car. So I knew that this was a really important problem to solve, but I knew that what I was currently doing in my life, remember we talked about the definition of innovation, anything that's already established. I realized I wasn't doing the right thing to solve this problem because I still had the problem. So the first question I had to ask myself was, what is the actual problem here? What is causing me to struggle with this obstructive sleep apnea? I mean, what is obstructive sleep apnea? I remember when I first got told about this, I had no idea what the term meant, and I needed to define that to really understand it. As I learned about what it actually was and what contributes towards it, I discovered that there were actually several areas surrounding sleep that I could tweak or improve to hopefully either get rid of the problem fully, or at least improve my sleep significantly so I could actually function. And that was things like the type of room I'm sleeping in, the type of mattress that I use, my nighttime routine. How do I wind down into sleep, and how do I wake up in the morning and get a good morning routine going? I didn't realize until I actually started kind of looking into it that solving this one problem actually would probably mean solving several smaller problems in different ways. And so the next step of innovation, and I'll give you the example with the sleep apnea, is to explore. Once you've defined the actual problem you're trying to solve, and you know exactly what needs to be tweaked, you have to figure out, well, what's the best way to solve this problem? What's the best change that I can make in my life now to solve that problem? And so we go out and we explore. We look at as many different examples as we can from other people who have been able to solve the problem. Sometimes this means going to, in my case, medical experts, and I had to meet with several experts to get their opinion. Sometimes it means talking with people that I found out had the same issue and asking them, what did you do to solve it? Sometimes it's just jumping on Google or YouTube and searching, how do I fix this sleep apnea, and seeing what comes up. But the key is to explore existing ideas and solutions. And the reason why is because either A, one of those existing solutions or ideas will work for you, or B, you might need to take an existing solution that someone else is doing and refine that or tweak that to work better for yourself. I want to go back to understanding what innovation is all about to really re-emphasize the point I'm trying to make. Innovation it's all about problem solving by developing new solutions to existing problems. It does not mean that you're supposed to have this genius, world-changing, game-changing idea that just spontaneously comes out of nowhere. Often, some of the greatest innovations in the world have come from taking things that already exist and saying, how can we make them better? Or how can we adapt them to suit our needs? And that's exactly what we're trying to do when we're innovating our own lives. What are things that other people are doing? Which ones could work for me? Which solutions or ideas could work for me? And how can I adapt those to fit my current lifestyle or my personality, or to suit my schedule, things like that. So once we've explored these existing solutions and ideas, we then go through the process of ideation. Now, this sounds like a big fancy word, but very quickly it means to form an idea. And often to form an idea, you need some type of material to think about first, which is why we explore existing ideas, and then we come up with our own based on these ideas that we found. So by creating your own solution, which might be taking something someone else has done and adapting it, it might be combining two other solutions that you've learned from two different sources into a new solution. By doing this, we actually start to see a potential way through this problem. We can see a potential solution to the problem, and most importantly, the motivation that we need to apply this new idea naturally comes about because we've actually identified something new that we can try. I noticed that for me, when I first got diagnosed with my obstructive sleep apnea, I struggled to have the motivation to even try to find a solution because I got in my own head. I would say things to myself like, "Oh man, you don't know anything about health, like sleep. You know, you're not a sleep doctor, or maybe this is just something you just have to push through. You know, maybe it's not something super serious. It's just something you've got to like make a couple of small changes to." But I struggled at first to actually try to solve the problem because I got in my own head. And it was only when I started using this process that I actually started moving forward. And it was actually this step here where the real motivation kicked in, because being inspired by some of these other ideas that I had found, when I kind of thought about the one that I think would work for me, something clicked in the back of my mind and I thought, oh, maybe this is the way through it. And I actually kind of imagined, what is my life going to look like if I can actually solve the sleep apnea problem? I'm going to be able to sleep properly, great. But I'm going to be able to get more work done. Oh, I like that. I'm going to be able to socially interact better because I'm not going to be struggling to form sentences with my brain getting so tired. I'm going to avoid crashing my car, which is always a nice thing. And of course, I'm going to be able to live longer because when you deprive yourself of sleep, it deprives yourself of lifespan. So as I found my own idea, I ideated, and I could see the potential results of implementing that idea. The motivation was there, but I had to follow the next step to access the potential behind this motivation, and that is to try it. One thing I will point out that I've learned over and over, probably I would say I've learned this one lesson the hard way over and over, is that sometimes we can be the biggest critics when we're trying new things. We can say to ourselves, that's not going to work, when we've never actually tried to do it yet. No, I don't think that's going to work because it doesn't really sound like the kind of thing I'd like to do. We don't know. We never know what will work until we actually put it into action. So we have to test that idea vigorously over and over and over again. We have to keep trying to apply that idea. And if we find the idea works, then we integrate it as part of our life by making it a habit. If we find that the idea doesn't work, but another idea that we found back in the explore stage actually sounded like it could work, well, then we go back to this step, we ideate again, and we try. The key to innovating is to go through this process repeatedly. The process, once again, is to define. Define the problem you're trying to solve. It could be a health problem like my sleep. It could be a relationship problem with a family member that you've been wanting to get closer to, or there might be a loved one who you've had a lot of tension with and you want to solve a problem there. It could be a problem like, what do I do with my life? What kind of career do I want to go into? It could even be, how do I make the chores around my house more efficient so I don't have to spend so much time cleaning? No matter what this problem might be, whether it's extremely significant or seemingly insignificant, the process is the same. Define that problem. Make it as clear as you possibly can what you're trying to improve or solve. Then explore. Explore as many ways that people have tried to solve this problem as possible. Talk to people that you think have had the same problem. Especially if you have a mentor that you look up to. Ask them, hey, did you ever struggle with whatever the problem is? Did you ever struggle with that? And if so, what did you do to improve it? Once you've explored those ideas, listen to that inner voice in your heart, because it will tell you the ideas that will probably work best for you. Pick an idea and ideate. Develop that idea and figure out, how do I actually apply this to my current life? in a way that makes sense to me. Create that solution within your mind and utilize that experience to see ahead of time and imagine, if I can solve this problem with this idea I've got, what will be the results of that? What will be the benefits that will come from that? And the final step is try. Try, try, try again. Try and fail, get up and try again. If you fail repeatedly, get up and try again. I can guarantee you that if you develop this mindset of innovating your life and you apply these steps to multiple areas of life, you will find that not only does life get more exciting, because now you're being more proactive about working through those problems, but you'll find that life gets easier. You'll find that your workload doesn't feel as heavy. The relationships that you've been trying to foster grow naturally. You'll find that you may not need to put as much effort into some of the habits that you struggled with at first, because you've applied this process and found what works for you. Hopefully this presentation has helped any of you with something you're struggling with in your life now. If any of you would like a copy of the slides or would love to get in touch with me and ask any questions, I'm more than happy to do so. My email is jesse@vaka.co.nz, jesse@vaka.co.nz. Thank you.